This panel is going to be about the future of education and the future of work, which, as I think most of you would agree, has undergone a lot of fundamental changes in the last couple of years, especially with things like COVID moving everything online. So I'm just going to start off by asking each of the panelists to give a 30-second intro about who they are and what they do and why they're here for the future of work and education. Let's start with James.
Sure. So my name is James Morrissey. I'm the co-founder of Mentor Collective. I think I have that company to thank for getting onto the Forbes list. And the reason why I started this company is I believe mentorship should not be something that's of random happenstance. It should be something every student, every employee has on every stage of their journey. And so, in the last question is what I think of the future of work, or?
No, or just a 30-second intro about
Great.
you would be great, yeah. Awesome.
Food.
I'll make it 10 seconds for myself.
Great.
My name is Rohan Shah, and I'm the CEO of an education technology company called Classavo. Basically, I'm rooting for Buffalo Bills. Next year, we'll get you guys. Basically, disrupting the entire textbook marketplace, making it more fun, interactive, and basically more effective for students to learn from.
Hi everyone. Disclaimer, I'm very hungry, so if my stomach makes noise. I'm Kian Katanforoosh. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Workera and a lecturer in the Department of Computer Science at Stanford University, where I focus on neural networks, which is a family of AI algorithms. I started in education a long time ago, first on working on democratizing access to education of artificial intelligence. Through the years, I've been fortunate to teach AI to over 3 million people, and most recently, talking to enterprises, to organizations, to governments, to individuals, I realized that the bottleneck to learn more is not any more content. There is so much content out there, and people feel like they do not know how to measure themselves, how to be guided with a mentor and understand what content to consume. And that's where I decided to spend the next few years of my life on building mentorship at scale for individuals, for enterprises, and for governments.
Hi everyone, my name is Johnathan Wang. I'm part of the Classavo team with Rohan here. And I would say that throughout my undergraduate career, I felt like there was a disconnect between students and professors in the classroom. So my mission is definitely to cultivate a community within the classroom.
Gotcha. Well, no, super interesting. It's great to have you guys here. So I think we can all agree that just how education has changed a lot in the last couple of years, right? With COVID and things moving online. So I'm just kind of firstly curious about what your perspective is on all of this. Like, how would you characterize how the industry has changed, about how people are getting educated, and what do you see as kind of the main trends in this space?
I'll just keep it really short and say COVID was a short-term headwind, long-term tailwind for education, and it's accelerating and it's very exciting.
I think I would agree with that. I think it's been a catalyst and not much of a change. However, for our own business, I think the biggest impact it had was it made professors cross over the learning curve of using technology in their classes. So after COVID, our inbound shot up 6 times. Our value proposition was much more easier to kind of share with them, and they really resonated with that. So that was definitely welcomed. However, what's interesting is after COVID, they finally understand the value of using technology in their class more effectively. And I know we've been talking a lot about democratizing access to content. That is definitely part of COVID as well, where it's become a lot easier to access content. However, it's become equally harder to engage students more.
A few trends. One is again on content. I think 10 years ago, there was much less content. Today, if you're in Ethiopia, in Iran, anywhere in the world with an internet connection and a computer, you can access classes from the top universities in the world, the top companies in the world, anything. So this changes the game. It doesn't mean that someone in a far remote area is equal and has equal access to being successful in the professional world compared to a top student. There are other reasons why top students at top universities are chased and mentored. But that's one big trend. The second trend on COVID, I think, is that companies are hiring everywhere. That will raise the salaries of people around the world, and that makes everyone in hubs compete with people in nearshore, offshore areas, which I think is a good thing because it allows the world to be much more meritocratic. However, one problem that we have not cracked yet remains. It's the fact that the world runs in terms of a professional workforce based on status, personal network, who you know, where did you graduate from, and it should not be like that. It should run based on measurable skills data, accomplishment, projects, and I think COVID has accelerated the move toward trusting psychometrically sound information, measurement of skills, project deliverables, and we'll see a lot more diversity in the next 10 years in our workforce because of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everybody else that COVID was able to accelerate teaching, and in the sense that in the past I would demo professors and other clients who actually didn't even know how to share a screen on Zoom. So it was really difficult at first to even get bookings. But then I think that SaaS companies were able to improve the industry in just about every single field in the past couple of years. And I think that once professors learn that they can poll and get direct interaction with students or any mentoring, any courses, there were huge advantages in teaching.
Yeah, no, super interesting. So everyone's been talking about all these positives, right, with like ed tech and things moving online, having just more reach and things like that. But I'm curious, like, from each of the panelists, like, what do you see as a negative? Like, what is one thing with everything moving online that is causing issues? And like, if you could all identify maybe like the biggest thing you think is the problem, and what ways could we do to overcome this challenge? That would be great. Let's start with anyone who wants to go.
Sure, I can start. I think in the next 10 years, soft skills are going to become hard skills. The great part about the last decade was, democratize access to education. So it's become easier to access introductory content to learn something, to get started, but it's also become equally harder to really become an expert in it. And part of that reason would be taking away the social aspect of learning. So that's kind of a negative trend of COVID, but I don't think for long term this is going to be, I know we'll come up with different ways and solutions to kind of tackle that, but at the same time, soft skills are going to become way much more in demand than just like very hard STEM skills.
I think overall it's a great thing. Things are moving online. I would say there are two short-term barriers. One is onboarding teachers and professors effectively to online instruction. A lot of them are kind of lost and just kind of flailing, and I think schools can invest more in that infrastructure. The second thing is I think there's an equity question when it comes to online education really helping everyone equally. I think there are those without laptops, without sufficient internet access, or other resources. So I just think we have to double click on how we make sure they have equal access.
I agree with James, and I have two main thoughts here. The first one is around content engagement. How many people in the room have taken over the last year a course online? Okay. So you've started a course online. How many of you have finished it? Okay, much less actually, like probably 2 or 3. So this is a huge issue. We've done. People have been educating other people and learning for thousands of years. It never happened online until the last 10, 20 years. So we've built the entire system to be in classroom where you have a teacher and a student. Unfortunately, it does not work the same way online. And so today, when I talk to companies, there are 2 ways that they deliver education to their employees. One is very prescriptive. A manager will say, hey, these thousands of employees have to take this course. And then they're going to take that course. And out of the 1,000 employees, oftentimes you have 5 success stories to talk about because 5 of them have finished the class and the rest have not. The second approach is a la carte, where they're going to purchase a huge catalog of thousands and thousands of courses, and we're going to say, hey, employee, figure it out. Magically figure it out. But the employees don't know where to start. There's 200,000 courses on Udemy only, and it's very hard to know what is good for you. So the engagement is super low. The second issue, which has nothing to do with it per se, but is the difference between teaching and education. Actually, in French, we have 2 words to say education. In English, there's no 2 words. The words are enseignement and éducation. Enseignement means teaching formally at school, and éducation means teaching at home. It's what your family gives you. The world has been focused on standardizing as much as possible enseignement or education at school so that we get to a meritocratic society. That's why a lot of us do tests standardized. We're all ranked on the same basis. If you want to be a doctor, if you want to be an engineer, if you want to be a business person, it's standardized and it's supposed to be good. But nothing has been done to standardize education at home. So when you come from a wealthy family, you know more words, you have more vocabulary, you know a lot more things, and you come out of your high school knowing a ton about business sometimes because your parents are entrepreneurs, or you know a ton about the body because your parents are doctors or they're professors and you're very acquainted to research. But this has happened at home, and this is a huge problem when it comes to equity, because a lot of people were helping their brothers and sisters or parents at the local shop, helping run the family, and they don't unfortunately get as much access to professional opportunities because they haven't had the same education at home. Yeah.
I think that right now the biggest issue is that there's often a disconnect in the classroom, especially now that we're moving on to using more and more technology. For example, in the past, I worked with a lot of bell curves because I come from an engineering background, so maybe you could get a 45 in a class and get an A in the class. And me and my peers, we found that we were able to do things such as skip entire sections in our textbook because we know we only need to get an 80. Our competitions really are our peers. So I think that something that professors would have to do is definitely get data between students, instant two-way feedback, and this way they can adjust their curriculum and anything that they're teaching, and we wouldn't have to bell curve at the end of the semester when it's too late, and they would just get bumped up a grade or 2, and they wouldn't actually learn anything.
Gotcha. Super interesting. So, like, we've heard a lot of your opinions about how, you know, this change in like education technology has led to many good things. We've also heard your opinions about how it's led to many bad things. What I've noticed is there seems to be an issue of equity, right? Like, some countries are maybe benefiting more, some countries are benefiting less. So what I'm really curious about now is, like, how would you characterize this, you know, moving to online education, this change in the ed tech industry, and how has that like affected developed versus developing countries, or, you know, like richer or poor regions more? I'd be very curious about your views on that. And let's start with Rohan.
Sure. It's honestly been absolutely great. Just piggybacking on the point earlier, it has definitely allowed a lot of, you know, developing countries to offer education at almost basically zero cost upfront to partake in it. So if I want to learn introduction into economics, I don't actually have to enroll in a school. I can just take a Udemy course, take an online class, things like that. But at the same time, all these different, what the future lies ahead is it's going to be a massive globalization of courses, that's probably one of the most exciting parts about where the world is moving in education, is that now professors, you can take courses from Harvard, not just at the content or watching the videos, you can actually interact with them. So at Classavo ourselves, we're building technology. We don't need more content, right? We have 1,200 textbooks. We don't need another 50 chemistry one-on-one books. No one needs that, right? Professors don't need from McGraw-Hill, Pearson. What they really need is how they can actually incentivize students implicitly to engage with the content themselves, right? So rather relying instead, because it's so not efficient. So what we are seeing in the world is that we'll have the top professors be able to engage students at a mass scale, which we have never been able to do that before, even in a classroom setting. So that's something that what I foresee in the future.
Right. I would definitely agree with Rohan as for the textbooks and the materials that students are currently using. I think that it would really help if professors were able to augment their textbook, as I've spoken just now about using student data. If they had instantaneous data, they would be able to change the content that they have right away after getting student feedback. So that's definitely what is missing in the classroom right now.
I have two thoughts. One is on education, one is on workforce, future of work. On education, I think a lot of us have had bad teachers growing up. I'm sure everybody remembers one bad teacher they had. I don't know, for me, maybe my 6th grade math teacher was not that good. This may not be a problem in the future, because we are a lot more people consuming content than people producing content. You do not need 100,000 people teaching math the same thing. And so while 20 years ago you need to have a math teacher in every classroom because they're delivering the content in a locality, today you need one amazing teacher in math that can be teaching to the world. And you need one great teacher in physics that is teaching to the world. I'm simplifying, you don't need one, you need more, but if you live in an area where there's not a lot of supply of good teachers, now you can take the course from the best teacher in the world in math. This has a huge impact on countries around the world. They do not need to train as many teachers, they can train facilitators who are using that content and facilitating the delivery in a classroom setting. So this is a huge shift. The second one is on workforce transformation. I'm curious actually because a lot of people have companies here and you probably have to deal with remote work. Remote work is complex. We're still learning how to work remotely. But one thing we know is it's always easier when you're in the same time zone as the person because you have a higher coverage in terms of alignment of work. This geographically has a huge impact on certain countries. For example, South America is seeing a huge surge in demand, supply of jobs, and also salaries, because the American companies who represent the largest economy in the world, in many industries, are now hiring in South America because it's on the same time zone. You have Africa with a huge surge in developers, for example, because European companies are now hiring in Africa, it's on the same time zone. And you'll have this shift across the world. I work with several governments on several time zones, and the best thing they can do for their economy right now is to double down on top skills, the top skills that are needed to build the future. Because in 10 years, you're going to realize you have more software engineers in Ukraine, in Kenya, or in Colombia than you have in developed countries. And one last thing, it's, you know this concept of starting by copy-pasting and then starting to innovate? It happened, and there's a lot of debate with China having copied a lot of top technologies for many years and now starting to innovate. In my space in AI, some of the top research publications come from Chinese universities today. It was not the case 10 years ago because they've shifted from applying the technologies from the West to implementing and innovating. I think the same thing can happen in many different countries around the world, where you start by learning, you start applying because now you have jobs that come to you, and then you can start innovating locally and building the economy. Yeah.
Gotcha. So final question for me, and you kind of hinted at that with the future of work. So there's been a lot of talk about education and how that's been changing. But what do you see that the implications of that are in terms of, you know, a person's place in the workforce, right? Like, you know, new technologies potentially replacing people, the stuff you're talking about with time zones. I'm just kind of curious, like, what are your thoughts on where we're heading in that direction?
I strongly believe that if you solve education, you solve basically every single problem on the planet Earth. And maybe Mars. Basically, I do think that in terms of where we're going to go in the future, either future of work or future of education, I think it's going to rely a lot on localization, and I think a lot of hyper local solutions in order to attract young talent is going to be very crucial. At the same time, the top professor teaching everyone else in the world sounds like too generic, and it very well could be. So even though we are going to get to that milestone where a single professor is able to teach everyone else out there, we are going to see a lot more hyper-localization of content, of engagement of students among their own peers, because everyone wants a community, and we learn best when we are brainstorming in a very collaborative environment. So I see a lot more initiatives being taken in that regards.
Yeah, and I don't know if you were heading in this direction, but I don't think that AI and machine learning could entirely replace teaching ever. I think that right now, instructors are really just missing the tools that they need to understand what's going on within their classroom, whoever they are mentoring, and exactly what needs to be worked on before it's too late to fix. So I definitely think that we just need the tools for professors and students.
James or Kian?
I think there's more and more of a winner-takes-all economy. I think technology allows you to scale your impact very quickly, and I think that means very bad things for quality. I think education is one of the tools we have against that, but I think it's moving too slowly.
Yeah, I agree. So one threat and one opportunity. To me, the threat is, and we had a panel on virality, which was very interesting, but one threat is attention economy. Is because of the rise of business models that are highly based on ads, especially in big tech. Today, attention economy is taking over. So you are watching content that someone wants you to watch. It should not be like that. You should be watching content that would allow you to have a positive impact on society. And so we have to shift from the attention economy into the learning economy. And it's going to take 10 years, 20 years, maybe more. And that's the threat. The opportunity to me is when I think at talent worldwide, I think of a supply and demand problem. There's a certain supply of skills, and we don't have ways to measure it, but hopefully in 20 years we can measure, everyone can measure their skills, and we have a common database of what we can do as a group. And we have demand. It's how much jobs are there out there, and what are we working on. This supply and demand mismatch is the main issue behind why unemployment is there. There are hundreds of millions of people who want to work, but they cannot work because they don't know how to contribute. They don't have the skills to match the supply and demand. And so this is the huge issue. It's also an opportunity because if we can measure at the global workforce level every skill, every competency, and every skills that are needed in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, if Marek needs 100 nanotechnology engineer or specialist in battery, we should know it now, and we should start training 100 people that are the most likely to get there in 2 years. And we can only do that if we have that data at the global level. And so I think it's a massive supply and demand issue that we need to optimize, and we are learning how to do it right now. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your thoughts.